Good morning. I was in a meeting this week talking about hosting annual conference. That's where Methodist churches from all over the state of Oklahoma get together for our business meeting, and quite often it's held at St. Luke's Church. And it got me to thinking, it was 30 years ago that I helped to host my first annual conference at St. Luke's. And one of the things that I remember is we would go and bring in these big banks of payphones. 30 years ago, you didn't have a cell phone. No, we were going to have several thousand people coming through the church, and people needed to call back home to their churches, to their families. So you had these big banks of payphones that they would set up. And we made sure we had plenty of change in the church so that people could get a quarter and be able to make their calls. So much has changed in 30 years. But when I got to thinking about that, it made me think about Norman Cousins. He told a story that I love. Norman Cousins was the editor-in-chief of the Saturday Night Review for more than 30 years. He wrote a book called The Healing Heart. But he tells the story in it about how it was back in the 80s, back when you only had payphones. He had flown into Los Angeles airport. He had a meeting. He was going to fly back home and have a meeting that night. But in the end, the flight was delayed. He needed to get word back to his office. He was going to miss the meeting and cancel it. He had one quarter, went to the payphone, put it in, and he didn't get a dial tone. Nothing. The quarter was gone. He was having to run for the airplane, needed to make the call, and so he started beating on the little tongue there for the receiver and trying to get something to happen. And finally, an operator came on and said, "May I help you?" And he said, "I just put in my last quarter. I didn't get a dial tone. I need to make a call." "I know you can push a little button. Push the button and let me have my quarter back." And she said, "I'm sorry, sir. I can't do that. But if you'll give me your name and your address, I'll be happy to mail it back to you." No. I need it right now," he said. "I need to make a call now. Please push the button." "I'm sorry, sir. If you'll give me your name and your address, I'll be happy to have it mailed back to you." "I don't need it later. I need it right now. Do you mean to tell me you're going to wind up cutting a check, using an envelope, 32-cent stamp, and you could actually give it to me right now?" "I'm sorry, sir. If you'll give me your name and your address, I'll be happy to mail it back to you." Norman said the stress of the moment, he lost it. He started beating on the payphone, just beating it with the receiver, beating on it, and suddenly all the money in the phone started coming out of the phone. It was like hitting the jackpot. You remember those little coin holders you'd push your finger in? I mean, money was coming out, quarters, nickels, and dimes. He couldn't catch it all. It was falling on the floor. He picked up the receiver and said, Operator, the craziest thing just happened. All the money is coming out of the payphone." And she said, "Sir, will you please pick up the money and put it back into the phone?" Norman picked up the receiver and he said, "Operator, if you'll give me your name and your address, I'll be happy to mail it back to you." It was the Apostle Paul who said to the Galatians, "Whatever you sow, so shall you reap." It is one of the basic laws of life. You reap what you sow. Maybe it's a good reason to go out this weekend and to sow kindness and laughter and joy. It's a good reason to go out and love your neighbor, no exceptions. That's what we want to reap. Have a great weekend.